future is about more than technological disruption. It's about ethics. Exponential technologies such as AI, robotics, and cybersecurity are forcing leaders to rethink the role of ethics in our future. For example, 9 out of 10 organizations said that they were aware of at least one instance where an AI system had resulted in ethical issues for their business. Our next guest has thought deeply about ethics and technology and the role that trust, security, and dignity play in building tech for good. She's also someone who has worked tirelessly to align technologies to society's needs. Monique Morrow is Senior Distinguished Architect for Emerging Technologies at Syniverse Technologies, as well as President and Co-founder of the Humanized Internet, a non-profit organization focused on giving every human being worldwide secure sovereign control over their own digital identity. With over 25 years experience as a global technology leader, she has worked across the industry, including with AMD, Ascon Hassler, Swisscom, and Cisco, where she served as CTO. Forbes magazine listed Monique as one of the top 50 women globally in technology, and as well as holding over 15 patents and co-authoring several books, she will soon be featured in a new initiative from the European Commission highlighting the top 100 women in cybersecurity. Please welcome, direct from Zurich, Switzerland, Monique Morrow.
Thank you, James. Well, let's frame the conversation a little bit. Let's talk about what AI in the enterprise really means for the enterprise itself, because there's so many things happening here. For me, it's all about walking in the shoes of a customer, walking in the shoes of the enterprise itself. We think about things like being able to automate internally tasks as an example, that which is used in the enterprise. Also data mining for business insights. But the other thing that we have to think about is, how is AI used to delight the customer? How is AI used to provide immediate and personalized solutions? And this is what we mean by interactions, if you will, that are human. One common theme that you will hear throughout my talk today is around what I call the anthropomorphism of AI. And that is really about the human in the loop. And so, for example, we have to think about the human interactions, as represented by AI, and instantiated for the enterprise immediacy, immediate results, for the customer immediacy, immediate results, and also that which is context. It's always contextual. And so we think also in terms of gamification, because as humans, we like to be rewarded. And so what does reward and gamification, when we're talking about AI in the enterprise, look like? AI in the enterprise has to be and must be explainable by the CEO. And the CEO needs to understand what it means to the organization overall. Because if the CEO is unable to explain what AI means in the organization, then we have a problem. And so it's very important that the organization, that is the enterprise, understands what AI and its usage can be and what it means for the business, what it means for the customers also. And the other thing that I wanted to actually speak about during this whole discussion is around the journey itself. And the journey means to look at what AI is for finance, for pharma, for entertainment and media, for gaming, for example. And one area that is very, very close and dear to me is around the area of cybersecurity, because this is a huge opportunity for AI in the enterprise. So let's get started, if we will, about what it means. In 2016, I had a chance to speak at the Airbnb Open Air Conference. And at that time, diversity in the organization was a hot topic. But what I did was take it from the next level around AI and what it means in terms of gender diversity in an organization. So because you have a company that is very data mining and data intensive, I looked at it from a different lens, and the different lens was quite unique at that particular time, but probably now embedded in most organizations. And that is around how could we think about achieving gender neutrality as an example. And so the thesis here is, we are human. We are the composition, when we think about the enterprise, of social connections. And this is really very, very important. Is eventually embedded in the DNA of the company, or the DNA of the enterprise itself. And when I spoke about a gamification aspect of this, in the form of thinking about it in terms of a desirable social entrepreneur, let's say, currency that could be awarded to me as, for example, as an employee. And so you may ask at this point in time, well, okay, well, who's the customer? Or who was this discussion intended for? And at the enterprise level, think about it. The customer was the employee, but certainly HR, and HR taking an even more intensive look at how it can, as a function, use AI to think about, what social tribing looks like within a company itself. And so I think it's very, very key, because now it's looking at, why do people come to me versus come to my colleague? What is it about me, or what is it about my colleague that makes it more interesting or more dynamic? And so understanding how social tribes are created organizationally is very, very interesting from an enterprise perspective. So HR, certainly in the enterprise, it's an example of how it is taking AI to the next level, and how it could take AI to the next level. But think about it. Let's take a step back for a moment. We are living in a hyper connected world, and with that hyperconnectivity comes huge amounts of data. Because when we're talking about AI in the enterprise, there is an assumption that we are using data to mine, for example, to look at how we can create more network effects organizationally. And one could, there's a pictorial from Raconteur that has been used quite often, that I use quite often, for example, that states now 90% of the data that we see over in the world today has been, probably even more so, generated in the last 2 years. And when we look at the life of data, 463 plus more exabytes of data is going to be probably produced by 2025, maybe 2021, even now. So 2025, even more so. So that provides, when you take a step back, some level of opportunity in this space. So there's data, and let's say troves and troves of data out there. But it's looking at how we, in the enterprise, can use that data not only to serve in terms of automating functions, but also in terms of creating new business opportunities, and also, as I stated before, delighting the customer overall. So let's look at AI in the finance, or in the financial perspective. We know that AI has been used for example, in the emergence of robo-advisors. We've seen that in the past several years, at least when we look at what is AI used for, internally versus externally, internally in an organization or an enterprise, and externally. And so one of these is, for example, robo-advisors. We have seen client credit risk scoring being automated, if you will, also portfolio management or portfolio optimization, compliance risk and fraud detection. But that is providing, for example, insights internally, let's say for a CFO in an enterprise, for a financial organization. But, it is focused, AI in finance is focused on algorithmic insights and predictability and outcomes. Now, the question is the value in financial organizations? Now, again, I walk into the shoes of a customer in an organization, but is that value actually being passed down to the customer? And I would argue not. It's not. And so remember, we have to think about what personalization looks like. How can an enterprise and financial organization pass value down to the customer, given the fact that we see so many dynamics that are occurring today in the financial institutions. We have the emergence of neobanks. What is a bank these days? The use of the mobile phone, for example, it becomes, your own wallet. And of course, this emergence for the past several years that we've seen of fintech. So consider, for example, what gamification could look like here. We have, if you are a financial institution and you're really trying to evolve as an enterprise, one of the things to consider, for example, is looking at what I call tokens. And I call them like environmental social governance tokens, ESG for short. And so this is, again, contextual for the customer. You may say, for example, you have, as a customer, generated X amount of tokens that this could be, we could plant a tree for you in your name, or you have a personalized ESG wallet, and so on. And the triggers here in the fintech organization would be, for example, to look at customer loyalty. You've been a loyal customer, or perhaps whether or not you're using e-banking. So here, as an example, you start to mitigate customer churn and you award that value to the customer. And that value can be awarded in such that it's contextual and, again, very, very, very personalized. So ESG tokens, ESG wallet, and, looking at loyalty tokens from a fintech or financial perspective, which is how AI can be used, because you're looking at how to transfer that value to the customer itself. AI, when we look at AI in pharma, again, you're looking at very, very common themes, even though the industries are vertical industries, but the themes are very contextual, very personalized, very targeted. And of course, you're seeing the extension of value to the customer. And in this particular case, we've seen it, what's happening with the COVID-19 vaccine and how that was accelerated in the past year to bring on a capability that benefits the consumer, that benefits the population as a whole. But AI for drug trialing or trial efficiency is an example that we have to assess even further. AI, for example, for drug price or drug price modeling. What is the sensitivity here? Again, as an enterprise in pharmaceutical business, you have to think about not only the price of the trials per se, but also what are the price modeling opportunities that can be had here. And again, walking very personally, what does it mean for aging and the caregivers? How do we target a pharma, or how do we target, let's say, a med assistant for situations that's Alzheimer's, for example, or even detecting Alzheimer's early on and being able to respond to it. It's also about early on detection, not only once you have Alzheimer's or once you have, been diagnosed, but how do we have early detection? How do we have responses? And how do we have actual care for it? This is very, very important for the patient. It's very important for the client itself. And from an enterprise perspective, looking at how you think about detection mechanisms, whether it's cancer, whether it's Alzheimer's. And if we take it a step further, we have to look at what does genomic research mean? Because now in genomic research, you're looking at large data sets that are required. We all have unique genomes, but large data sets, because now it's unique to us. And that becomes an opportunity in terms of what we will call, what is often referred to as precision medicine, if you will. And it's an opportunity because it's about immediacy, it's about being contextual. And here, the patient, the customer, is really the customer. And again, being very personalized. And of course, what we see further happening is the use of our mobile phone for self-diagnosis, so that you can say, whether it's for skin cancer or whether it's for something that doesn't feel right about you, it becomes personalized, and your mobile phone is used as often as a tool. So imagine how you take that a step further in terms of remote monitoring, remote care, and also having sort of a med bot capability, which says, this interaction, remember, it's about the human in the loop and a social interaction, maybe sort of providing some level of a very, I would say, macro level of a diagnosis, further perhaps connecting you to a physician, a live physician, and then perhaps eventually to your own physician, so that you're able to actually take it down, take it across the path, where in this particular case, the patient certainly is, and the consumer and the customer certainly is in that loop. But again, it creates a very, very sticky opportunity, if you will, for precision medicine, for the social interactions, for looking at how we can create that personalization, if you will, of an experience. And then, of course, creating this notion of what we call medbots. And with eventually a live physician that comes in, because it's nothing, a physician who can assess, if you will, looking at what examples of diagnosis could be, but with a caveat that it goes to your own doctor at the end of the day. But you have become part of that research, and part of that, not research, but part of that dialogue and discussion. And that's really important, because now you have very much fluidity, again, with the pharma industry, pharma med industry, fluidity of the interactions that, of course, we call it have to have the human in the loop. If we look at another opportunity, and that is AI in the entertainment and media business. And there's so much happening here. And with every example that I provided, there's so much happening. So we're just hitting, if you will, the tip of the iceberg. And one is around personalized, if you will, that we call personalized gaming, or what I'll call not just gaming, but direct-to-consumer interactions. And so the consumer, there's the direct-to-consumer interaction, again, based on sort of looking at mining of what it is you're doing in the media, whether you're watching something or and so on. And so this is one example. The other is also consumer. The consumer is now the content deliverer. So you have personalized interactions, again, consumer content delivery. You have the consumer that is also the content deliverer. And so for the enterprise, what does that mean? We know. And so an example could be, again, you see a common term, that theme that I'm using here. An example could be, for example, a loyalty token gamification. So after so many views of your favorite, whatever it is that your streaming event, after so many views, or perhaps after so many content creation that you have as a customer created, perhaps, using some level of a platform here, you can pick your platform, views, creation, that you reward that, you have a reward. That would be, for example, X amount of loyalty tokens. You can see this X gamification process here, X amount of loyalty tokens that could be exchanged for service discounts, as an example, or your video, or maybe your video or the customer video, it becomes one of the top 3 featured on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, where time is variable. So you can see now immediacy, real time, gamification here, and so the fluidity of what it means in the media. And you can actually add, for example, esports and immersive events, because it's now esports is has been emerging for some time now, but immersive in that you're actually part of it. You're actually not only from an audience perspective, but maybe that's an additional that you could, as an enterprise, think about providing an esports immersive event. Stay tuned, and people become part of that, right? So it becomes that, and it's still, that has been going on for some time now, for the past several years. But now you sort of have this wide versions of Converge, if you will, of like esports immersive event, and also, with when we think about AI and entertainment and media, but you could also add learning. and as a complement, as a service offering. So think about a service offering where it's learning that you as an enterprise in the media space can offer, where you're again keeping it very close to the customer, but you're rewarding that customer for not only providing content, but also being sort of a loyal customer to your platform, if you will. And that's something that we have to think about more and more in the industry. But again, as I said before, it becomes very, very contextual and very, very personalized. And that is what we see constantly. If I look at connecting the dots from AI and media and entertainment, you can think about now what happens in the gaming event. I mean, I think it's just the sky's the limit here. It's so very exciting. But think about customization and personalization in gaming. And I think where video characters, for example, are actually based on personalized and based on the gamer style. So you have companies like Sony kind of mainly in this particular space, but taking it further. You can take it further. And that is, think about pathfinding in gaming, where you have to get from A to B and as part of the gaming experience in itself. But also, there is a requirement, looking at just reviewing Reddit conversations quite recently, there is a requirement to have your own, just as you have your own personalized trainer in exercising, to have your own personalized gamer trainer. And that could be a trainer box, as an example. One person actually, or individual actually stated, it would be very interesting or good if AI bots are added in custom games, so that rookies can practice their angles and crosshair placements for in the space and at different maps that helps them improving their headshots and the movement across the maps. Also, bots can be more challenging in setting different difficulty levels. You have a difficulty level X. Maybe it's very simple. Maybe you can take it up another notch. And so it becomes your own personalized player, what I'll call a trainer bot for gamers. And again, it's contextual. The player can adjust their skills according to their experience and to their convenience. But there is another area, and again, you see this intersectionality between loyalty, between having this personal interaction, human interaction, but also awarding. And I think, for example, a tokenization here in gamer space would be consider the use of non-fungible tokens or NFTs. And this is quite unique because, most of the digital assets that we see from a player, it exists in games. It's for example, their assets are unique. Their skills are unique. And so they may want to sell certain, assets that are only unique to them, to other players. And this can be sort of in the space, being able to achieve a certain level, but which is unique. And that's why it's very, very important that it is unique to, let's say, other players. And so they put in, gamers put in a lot of resources to being able to collect, being able to look at how they deal with one and rare kinds of game assets. And they like to show it off to other players. So why not do that? And why not have NFTs or non-fungible tokens, because it's unique. It's gamers being able to show it as a skill level, and to have it fueled by NFTs. And I think this is a space for the enterprise, again, when we think about what's happening in gaming, AI, but also the tokens and being able to use non-fungible tokens as an example. But there is one area that I think is very, very important for us when we think about transitioning from entertainment and gamers and gaming, is AI and cybersecurity. Because this is a hot area, as we can well imagine. We have to think about what does malware detection and response look like in terms of mining for what we call these areas of forensics. especially in terms of device changes. And when we think about the Internet of Things, the forensics and piracy become even more important today. And there's some figures that I always like to sort of quote here, but cyber attacks have increased 300%. And just IoT devices, that was just in 2019. We can imagine what it is now. 72% of enterprises, 72% of enterprises are experiencing or have experienced or will think about experiencing, for example, an increase in IoT devices. And security incidents, for example, in 2020 have increased, and let alone 2021. And we know it's all made the front page news here. So another area that we have to think about from an enterprise perspective in AI and cybersecurity is that 56% of enterprises anticipate, 56% at least anticipate a compromise due to an endpoint or IoT originated attack. And so, and that's within the next 12 months. And you see that happening and increasing even further. It is the preferred target for ransomware. We're now looking at even more of an increase in this space. So there is very much an opportunity for AI and cybersecurity, specifically around forensics and devices, forensics in the way we cloud interactions are, or how we interact amongst ourselves. What are the algorithmic differences, for example, in deltas that can be detected and actually flagged for attention. So we know that it's going to be even more sophisticated because cyber criminals scour the internet for what they call exposed API tokens, and so it's one of the easiest ways to create and leverage an enormous botnet made of zombie IoT attacks. And so we have to be able to now respond to that. We have to be able to detect it ahead of time. And remember what I commenced with as part of the narrative here. It's about immediacy. It's about that which is contextual and being able to do it in quote unquote real time. So it represents sort of this area that we have to address. And whether they are whether they're at the very, very device level from its inception, or whether we're looking at forensic detection in terms of what's happening in your environment, in your organization today, it has to be at the CEO level. It's everybody's business. You can again gamify this by making sure that people are constantly aware of what's happening in phishing and phishing attacks, and being aware of it, and setting up social hacking attacks internally in the organization to see what level of employees, bought the bait, and so because it's an example of what is happening not only internally in the company but externally, and so it has everything to do with our business. And it is everybody's business. And it's not just a CISO's business. It's everybody's business when we talk about AI and the opportunity here. There can be, in terms of offering, in terms of security threat assessments that are constant, training, as I just alluded to, gamifying the training. What is the minimal training that is required, and how do you get to sort of levels of badges internally as an organization? But real-time threat modeling, and that's where AI for cybersecurity plays very, very, very importantly and very powerfully. And so again, gamification also in terms of bug bounties, open it up for wherever your areas of weaknesses are. But real-time threat modeling is very, very much of an opportunity for us in the enterprise space when we talk about AI in the enterprise itself. So what is the implication to talent? Well, there is an opportunity for the enterprise to look at developing and hiring talent. So you see this intersectionality between a technology like AI that has to be explainable by the CEO and understood by the CEO to impacts and implications to its business itself. So there has to be the development and hiring of the relevant talent insofar that the talent, what you're creating, has relevance to your service offerings, to your business, to your customers. It has to be very tightly coupled. Otherwise, you operate in silos. And so that means also the CEO, as I stated before, has to understand the implications of AI to his or her business. And it's very, very important to assert this from the very, very beginning. And so it's not just about developing, having the cool effect here, but it's about relevance in the business at the end of the day. So that's one area, is to be able to create the talent, being able to hire the talent, being able to couple it to, what could be examples of interactions to its business. But I want to now take it to concluding thoughts. Remember, AI for the enterprise is contextual. And the human is in the loop, but it's via human-like interactions. This is very, very important. The value proposition must be known not only internally as an enterprise, but externally to the customer. And recall that the example I had in finance, that it's not known to the customer, but there's an opportunity to do so. Use gamification, use reward loyalty tokens, or even take it a step further, like I stated in terms of gaming, to have non-fungible tokens, but use those tokens to be able to provide, if you will, that type of experience and coupling for loyalty. Develop and hire and partner cross-organizationally, not to keep it in a silo, but cross-organizationally and cross company-wise or between companies, because that will actually bring commonality, if you will, to what could be a super experience for a super opportunity for AI in the enterprise. It doesn't have to be so nerdy or geeky. There is a real great opportunity here for everyone. And most importantly, I wish you all a happy Relevant conference, a Reinvent, if you will, conference with relevance, but a Reinvent conference because there is so much that we're doing in this space and so much to be had. And it's very important for the enterprise. You're taking it up one level. So happy conference.
Thank you, Monique. Wonderful to hear Monique's human-centric AI vision and the importance of AI for enterprises seeking reinvention.